Story 1, Letting Go of the Past, A Journey of Inner Peace. In a small village nestled between the mountains and rivers, there lived a young woman named May. She was known for her kindness. But beneath her soft exterior, May carried a heart burdened with past wounds. She had lost her parents at a young age and was raised by her grandfather, who was the village elder and a wise teacher. While she had many friends, May often found herself retreating into isolation, haunted by the past and the bitterness that had grown inside her. One day, the village elder called May to his home. He had noticed her growing sorrow and the distant look in her eyes. Sitting by the fire, he gently spoke to her, "May, there is something important you must learn. In life, we all face pain. But it is not the pain itself that defines us, it is how we carry it that matters." May looked down, her hands trembling. "I cannot forget what happened, grandfather. The loss of my parents. The cruelty of life, it feels like it weighs on me every day." The elder nodded, understanding her pain. He smiled softly and then shared a story with her. "There once was a young prince, much like you, who carried the burden of a great loss. He had watched his kingdom fall into darkness, and the grief of his people weighed heavily on him. Every night, he would walk alone in the palace garden, replaying the moments of his past in his mind. One day, a wise hermit came to the prince and said, 'What you carry within you, you must set down. For you cannot walk forward while holding the weight of the past.' 'How can I set it down?' May asked, her voice filled with longing. The elder looked into her eyes. 'You must learn to forgive, not just others, but also yourself. The past is a shadow that you cast by holding on to it. Only when you let it go will the sunlight of peace fill your heart.' For weeks, May meditated on her grandfather's words. She tried to understand the true meaning of forgiveness. And one evening, as she sat by the river, she felt a strange peace wash over her. She closed her eyes and imagined the pain she had carried for so long, each memory of loss, each painful moment, each injustice she had faced. She visualized them as stones she had been carrying in her hands. With a deep breath, she imagined setting those stones down on the riverbank, watching as the river carried them away. It was then that May realized that forgiveness was not about forgetting, it was about freeing herself from the shackles of the past. The next day, May visited the graves of her parents. She sat quietly, speaking to them with love and gratitude, not anger or regret. As she spoke, a deep sense of relief filled her heart. She felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The elder, seeing her transformation, nodded approvingly. "You have done well, May. Now, you must share this lesson with others. Just as the river does not hold on to the past, neither should you." In time, May became a beacon of wisdom in the village. She helped others release their past pains, guiding them toward peace and healing. She taught that true strength lies not in holding on to grievances, but in letting go and embracing the present moment with an open heart. May's journey reminds us that to move forward, we must release the chains of the past. The bitterness of old wounds keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering. But when we learn to forgive and let go, we free ourselves to embrace the beauty of the present and the future. Key takeaways from the story. Letting go of past hurts, carrying the weight of past traumas only hinders our personal growth and peace. By letting go of anger, regret, and resentment, we create space for healing and transformation. Forgiveness as freedom. True forgiveness does not mean forgetting, it means setting ourselves free from the emotional burdens that keep us chained to the past. Living in the present. When we stop dwelling on what has already passed, we can begin to live in the present moment, experiencing life with a renewed sense of peace and joy. Story 2, Freeing the Mind from Material Attachments, The Path to True Happiness. After May's transformation, her reputation as a wise and compassionate woman spread throughout the village. People came to her for guidance, seeking answers to their struggles. Whether they were personal, spiritual, or emotional. Despite the love and respect she had earned, May could sense that many of those who came to her were still trapped in the cycle of craving and attachment. They sought happiness in the things they could acquire, believing that material wealth and possessions would bring them lasting peace. One day, as May sat under the shade of an ancient tree, an old friend named Lee approached her. Lee was a successful merchant, well known for his wealth and status in the village. His house was filled with exquisite items, and he had many followers who admired him. Yet, May could see the unease in his eyes as he sat beside her. "May," Lee said, his voice carrying a tone of worry, "I have everything I ever wanted, fine clothes, a beautiful home, wealth beyond measure, but I feel empty. It seems that no matter how much I acquire, the happiness I seek always slips through my fingers." May looked at him kindly, her heart filled with compassion. "Lee, you are not alone in this. Many people believe that happiness can be bought, but true happiness does not lie in possessions. It lies within the heart, in the peace that comes from releasing attachments." Lee furrowed his brow. "But how can I let go of what I've worked so hard for? My wealth, my success, these are the things that define me. Without them, who would I be?" May smiled softly, understanding his confusion. She shared with him the story of a wise monk who had once lived in the mountains, far from civilization. The monk, despite his simple life, was revered by all who met him for his inner peace and wisdom. One day, a wealthy merchant came to him, hoping to learn the secret to his happiness. The monk invited the merchant to sit beside him under a large tree and began to speak. "You have all the riches in the world. Yet your heart is restless. Why? Because you believe that what you own defines who you are. But the truth is, the more you cling to material things, the more you distance yourself from your true self. Happiness does not reside in the things you own, it resides in your ability to let go of them." The merchant, intrigued yet skeptical, asked, "But surely, wealth brings comfort and security. How can I live without it?" The monk replied, "The river flows peacefully because it does not try to hold on to the water it carries. Just as the river's flow is constant, so too should your mind be free. When you cling to the past or to possessions, you stop the flow of peace within yourself. The key is to live with what you have, but not to define your worth by it." Lee listened intently as May finished the story. Her voice was calm and steady, as though she had found the very peace the monk spoke of. "You see, Lee," May continued, "true happiness comes from the freedom of not being bound by your possessions or your desires. When we let go of the need to acquire more, we open ourselves to the abundance that exists within us. Happiness is found in the simplicity of life, in appreciating the present moment, and in being content with what we have." Lee felt a shift within himself. The weight of his wealth, once a source of pride, now felt like a burden. He realized that his endless pursuit of more had only led to feelings of emptiness. As he sat in silence, contemplating May's words, he began to understand that the path to true happiness lay not in accumulating material things, but in letting go of the need for them. In the weeks that followed, Lee began to change. He simplified his life, reducing his attachment to his possessions, and began to find joy in the simple things, spending time with loved ones, enjoying nature, and helping those in need. He found that the more he let go of his attachments, the lighter his heart became, and the deeper his sense of inner peace grew. May, witnessing her friend's transformation, smiled. She knew that the true treasure of life was not in wealth or status, but in the peace that comes from living authentically and in harmony with the world around us. Key takeaways from the story: material attachments and the illusion of happiness. The pursuit of material wealth often leads to emptiness. True happiness cannot be found in possessions, but in the freedom to live without attachment. The importance of simplicity. By simplifying our lives and focusing on what truly matters, we can experience deep peace and contentment. Letting go of desire. Happiness is not about acquiring more, it's about freeing ourselves from the desire for more. When we let go, we create space for joy and fulfillment. As May continued to share her wisdom, she realized that the lessons of forgiveness, detachment, and inner peace were all interconnected. Each step in her own journey was one of learning to free herself from the constraints of the past, from the false promises of material gain, and from the comparison to others. Through each lesson, May came closer to the true meaning of happiness, living in the present moment, unburdened by the weight of what once was or what might be. Story 3: Embracing Change, the River of Life. As time went on, May's teachings reached more and more people in the village. She became known not just for her wisdom but also for her compassion and grace. Many who had once been lost in the pursuit of worldly things found peace through her words. Yet, there was still one area that many struggled with: change. May knew that while her village had learned to free themselves from attachment to material things, they had not yet fully embraced the inevitable flow of life itself. Change, for some, was still a source of fear and anxiety. They clung to what they knew, unable to let go of old ways, and feared the unknown future. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the village, a young woman named Lin approached May. Lin was the daughter of the village's most respected elder, and though she had everything, youth, beauty, and the favor of her elders, she was often seen brooding in silence. May invited her to sit by the peaceful stream that ran through the village, hoping the quietude of nature would help open Lin's heart. "I see that something burdens you," May said gently, her voice carrying the warmth of a long summer's day. "What is it that troubles your mind?" Lin hesitated, her fingers nervously playing with the hem of her robe. "It is change," she said softly. "I fear what will happen when the things I hold dear are no longer the same. My family, my friends. Everything is in constant motion, and I cannot hold on to any of it. How can I find peace when life keeps shifting, like the river that never stops flowing?" May smiled knowingly, her eyes reflecting the serenity of the flowing water beside them. "Life, my dear Lin, is like the river. It flows, it moves, it changes, and it never stays still. The more we try to resist it, the more we suffer. When we accept change as a natural part of life, we learn to live with it in peace." Lin looked at the stream, her eyes following its steady movement. "But how can I accept that everything changes? How can I stop fearing what's to come?" May began to share a story, one that had been passed down through generations. Once, there was a wise teacher who lived high in the mountains, far from the noise of the world. One day, a young traveler came to him, seeking answers to the troubles that weighed on his heart. The traveler asked, "Master, why must everything change? I wish I could hold on to things as they are. I fear that if I let go, I will lose everything." The teacher smiled and led the traveler to a great river that flowed through the valley. "Do you see this river?" the teacher asked. "It is constantly changing, always moving, never the same as it was a moment ago. But it does not resist. It flows in harmony with the landscape, accepting every bend, every rock, every turn that comes its way." The traveler, perplexed, said, "But I do not wish to be like the river, constantly changing. I wish for stillness, for things to stay as they are." The teacher nodded. To resist change is to resist life itself. Just as the river flows with ease, we too must learn to embrace the changes that come to us. When we fight the current, we only exhaust ourselves. When we accept the flow, we find peace. The traveler pondered the teacher's words and realized that the very essence of life lies in its ability to adapt. And just like the river, if we accept change rather than fight it, we too can find peace in the constant motion of life. May paused, letting the story settle in Lin's heart. "You see, Lin," she said softly, "change is the flow of life. When we allow ourselves to move with it, rather than trying to fight it, we find strength. It is not the change itself that causes pain, but our resistance to it. Lin looked at the stream again, her heart beginning to open. But what if I change in ways that I do not like? What if I lose myself in the process? May chuckled softly. Change does not mean losing yourself, it means growing. Just as a tree grows tall by shedding its leaves, we, too, grow stronger by embracing the inevitable changes of life. Trust that every change is a step towards your highest self. Life will never be static. It will move, and with it, we must move, too. Lin sat in silence, the weight on her heart lifting with each passing moment. She began to understand that to resist change was to resist life itself. By embracing it, she could discover a deeper peace, a peace that came not from holding on but from letting go and flowing with the river of life. Key takeaways from the story. Change is inevitable, just like the river, life is constantly changing. To resist change is to resist life. Embrace the flow, and you will find peace. Growth through change. Change is not something to fear but an opportunity for growth. Each moment of transformation leads us closer to our true self. Trust in the flow. By trusting the flow of life, we can move through difficult times with grace and resilience. In the weeks that followed, Lin began to approach life with a new perspective. She no longer feared change but saw it as an opportunity for personal growth and self-discovery. As the seasons passed, Lin grew wiser and more peaceful, learning to live in harmony with the ever-changing flow of life. May's teachings, once a distant concept, had become a lived reality for her. And through her own transformation, Lin became an inspiration for others, just as May had been for her. Story 4, Letting Go of Comparison, Finding Strength Within. As Lin embraced change with grace, May continued to observe the people of the village, guiding them on their paths. While many had learned to flow with life's transitions, there was still a lingering struggle in their hearts. It wasn't just the fear of change, but also the constant comparison to others that clouded their peace. One quiet evening, as the village gathered by the lake, May noticed a young man named Ji sitting alone under a tree, staring into the distance. Ji was an ambitious young man, always seeking validation from others. He often compared himself to his peers, feeling either superior or inferior depending on who he was with. May had noticed this internal conflict, and it saddened her to see the pain it caused him. Approaching him slowly, May sat beside Ji and waited for him to speak. After a moment of silence, Ji finally looked up and said, "Master May, I feel lost. Every time I look at others, I feel like I am not enough. Some are more successful, some are wiser, others have more wealth, more followers. I cannot stop comparing myself to them, and I feel inadequate." May listened intently, her eyes filled with understanding. She had seen this pattern in many before. A deep yearning to measure up to others, to seek validation through comparison. It was a cycle that often led to frustration, self-doubt, and an inability to truly appreciate one's unique path. "You are not alone in this, Ji," May said gently. "So many people struggle with comparing themselves to others. It is a natural part of being human, but it is also a trap. It keeps us from seeing our own worth, our own strength." Ji nodded, looking down at the ground. "But how can I stop? How can I be content with who I am when everyone else seems to have something that I don't?" May smiled softly and replied, "Let me tell you a story. Once, there was a peacock who lived in a beautiful garden. Every day, the peacock would strut proudly, showing off its magnificent feathers. One day, it noticed a crow perched in a nearby tree, its feathers plain and simple. The peacock laughed to itself, feeling superior because its feathers were so much more beautiful and vibrant than the crow's. However, the crow was not bothered by the peacock's display. It simply observed from its perch, content in its own simplicity. One day, a storm came through the garden, and the peacock, with its heavy, beautiful feathers, struggled to fly. The storm was too strong, and the peacock's feathers weighed it down. But the crow, with its light and simple feathers, flew gracefully through the storm, finding shelter on the other side. The next day, the peacock, drenched and tired, approached the crow and asked, "How is it that you could fly so easily while I struggled?" The crow looked at the peacock with kindness and said, "I do not compare myself to you, nor do I wish to be like you. I am content with who I am. Your beauty lies in your feathers, but my strength lies in my wings. We all have our unique gifts, and we must not compare them to others." May paused, allowing the story to sink in. The lesson of the peacock and the crow is that we each have our own path, our own strengths. When we compare ourselves to others, we forget that we are uniquely equipped to walk our own journey. Your success is not defined by the achievements of others, but by your ability to cultivate your own gifts and live in harmony with your true self. Listened thoughtfully, a sense of peace beginning to settle in his heart. But how do I find my own strength? How do I stop measuring myself by others? May smiled warmly. You must look within. Stop searching for validation in the eyes of others. When you cultivate your own self-awareness, when you honor your unique gifts, you will find strength in being true to who you are. The only comparison that matters is the one between who you are today and who you were yesterday. Nodded, realizing the truth of May's words. He had spent so much time looking at the lives of others, measuring his worth against their success, that he had forgotten to look within. In that moment, made a vow to himself: he would stop comparing and start living for himself. He would embrace his own strengths and learn to appreciate the person he was becoming, instead of trying to become someone else. Key takeaways from the story. Comparison is a trap. Constantly comparing yourself to others will only lead to frustration and self-doubt. You are unique, and your journey is your own. Embrace your own gifts, just like the peacock and the crow. Each of us has our own strengths. When we stop comparing and start embracing what makes us unique, we find our true power. Look within for strength. True strength comes from within. Cultivate self-awareness and honor your own path. The only valid comparison is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. In the days that followed, Ji's transformation was evident. He became more content and focused on his own growth. He no longer sought validation from others but instead found fulfillment in his own journey. His inner peace grew, and so did his ability to connect with others. Ji's story became a source of inspiration for many in the village who struggled with the same feelings of inadequacy. May, seeing the change in Ji, knew that her work was not just in teaching but in helping others rediscover their own inner strength. And so, the village grew, not in wealth or material possession, but in wisdom, self-awareness, and peace. Story 5: Living in the present moment, finding peace in the now. As the seasons passed, the teachings of May began to ripple through the village, reaching not just those who sought her wisdom, but also those who had never met her face to face. Her guidance was beginning to help many realize that true peace did not lie in external circumstances, but in the cultivation of the mind and spirit. May's reputation as a teacher spread, and one day, a young woman named Lian came to her seeking guidance. Lian, a bright and ambitious woman, had everything she thought she needed to be happy. She had a successful business, a loving family, and a wide circle of friends. Yet, despite all this, she could not find peace. Her mind was constantly racing, filled with thoughts of past mistakes, future worries, and the pressure to achieve even more. Lian felt as though she was running on a never-ending treadmill, constantly striving for something she could never quite grasp. One afternoon, Lian arrived at May's humble dwelling. The soft rustling of leaves and the distant sound of the river flowing by created a peaceful atmosphere. And May welcomed her with a warm smile. What brings you here today, my child? Mei asked, motioning for Lien to sit beside her. Lien looked troubled, her brow furrowed with worry. Master Mei, I feel like I am constantly chasing something. No matter how much I achieve, I still feel empty. My mind is never at peace. I am always thinking about what I did wrong in the past or what I need to do in the future. How can I find true happiness when I am always so caught up in my thoughts? Mei observed Lien carefully and then replied with a question, do you ever take time to simply be present? To simply exist in the moment without any thoughts or worries? Lien hesitated. I try to focus on the present, but my mind always drifts to what has happened or what might happen. I can't seem to quiet it. Mei smiled gently, her eyes filled with wisdom. The mind is like the surface of a river. When the water is disturbed, it is clouded and unclear. But when the water is calm, it reflects the sky perfectly. So too is the mind, when it is restless, it cannot see the clarity of the present moment. Only when the mind is still can we experience the beauty of the now. Lien's expression softened as she tried to understand Mei's words. But how do I calm my mind? I feel like my thoughts are always racing. Mei nodded, understanding her struggle. The first step is to let go of the need to control your thoughts. Most people believe that they must rid themselves of all thoughts in order to find peace. But this is a misconception. Thoughts will come and go, like clouds passing through the sky. What matters is how we respond to them. We must learn to simply observe our thoughts without attachment or judgment. When we stop fighting them, they lose their power. Lien listened intently, but the weight of her thoughts still felt heavy. I've heard this before, but I struggle to do it. How do I stop thinking about the past and the future when they are so present in my mind? Mei placed a hand on her heart and spoke softly. The key is to bring your awareness back to the present moment. The here and now. When your mind wanders, gently guide it back to the sensations of your body, the breath in your lungs, the sounds around you. Focus on what is right in front of you. Without judgment. Each moment is a gift, and it is only in the present that we can truly experience the fullness of life. Lien closed her eyes, attempting to follow Mei's advice. She felt the cool breeze on her face, the gentle rise and fall of her breath. For a moment, her mind quieted. The worries, the regrets, and the anticipation for the future faded away, leaving only the peaceful stillness of the present. When she opened her eyes, she smiled, realizing that in that brief moment, she had found peace. Mei's voice interrupted her thoughts. You see, my child, the present moment is always available to you. It does not require effort or striving. It simply is. The more you practice being present, the more you will cultivate a sense of calm, clarity, and contentment in your life. Lien felt a sense of lightness, as though a burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She understood now that peace was not something to be chased after, but something to be embraced in the here and now. She could let go of the constant worry about what had happened or what might come. The present moment was enough. Key takeaways from the story. The present moment is the only moment we have. True peace comes from being fully present, without worrying about the past or future. The only time that exists is the now. Let go of the need to control your thoughts. Thoughts will come and go, but we don't need to cling to them. By observing them without attachment, we allow our minds to become still and clear. Practice awareness and mindfulness, bringing your awareness to your breath. Your body and your surroundings can help you reconnect with the present moment and experience the fullness of life. In the weeks that followed, Lien began to incorporate Mei's teachings into her daily life. She made time each day to sit quietly, focusing on her breath and the sensations in her body. Gradually, her mind became calmer, and the constant rush of thoughts slowed down. Lien no longer felt as though she was chasing happiness, instead, she discovered that happiness was already within her, waiting to be experienced in the present moment. The people around her noticed the change. She was more peaceful, more patient, and more content. When others asked her what had brought about such a transformation, she shared the teachings of May, helping others find peace by embracing the present moment. May, too, continued her journey, knowing that every person she helped was a small spark lighting the way for others. As the village flourished in wisdom, she saw the power of living fully in each moment. Teaching that true peace is not found in external circumstances, but in the stillness of the mind and the presence of the now. Story 6, Embracing Change, the River of Life. As Lien began to embrace the teachings of living in the present moment, she began to notice a deeper transformation in herself. She had always been someone who clung to the familiar, unwilling to let go of the past or welcome the uncertainties of the future. But May's wisdom had begun to plant seeds of change within her, and over time, Lien felt herself shifting, like a tree slowly bending toward the light. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, May invited Lien for a walk along the river that ran through the village. The water glistened under the fading sunlight, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers. May walked with a slow, deliberate pace, and Lien followed her, her mind calm, free from the usual chatter of worries and concerns. "Do you see the river?" May asked, stopping by the water's edge. "This river, like all rivers, is always changing. It never stays the same, not for a moment. The water flows, bends, and adapts to the landscape around it. Just like the river, life is in constant motion. The only certainty in life is change." Lien watched the river, its waters flowing smoothly, effortlessly adapting to the bends in its path. The movement was natural, without resistance, as if the river had surrendered to the inevitable force of change. May continued, her voice gentle but firm. "Many people spend their lives fighting change. They hold on to what is familiar, what is comfortable, even when it no longer serves them. But true peace and growth come from embracing change, from learning to flow with life, just as the river flows with the land." Lien looked at May, her face thoughtful. "I have always been afraid of change," she confessed. "I fear the unknown, the things I cannot control. I have spent so much of my life clinging to what I knew, even if it was hurting me. But now, I see that the river does not fight its path. It simply moves with it, trusting in the process." May nodded, pleased with Lien's insight. "Yes, my child. Change can be daunting, but it is through change that we grow. Life's river may take us to unexpected places, but each twist and turn is an opportunity for us to learn, adapt, and become stronger. The key is to stop resisting, to stop clinging to the past, and to trust that the river of life will guide us exactly where we need to go." For the first time, Lien felt a sense of release, as though a heavy weight had been lifted from her heart. She had spent so many years resisting change, trying to control every aspect of her life. But now, she understood that the more she tried to hold on to things, the more she would suffer. By letting go, by surrendering to the flow of life, she could experience the peace and growth that had always been within her reach. "Let go of your fear of the unknown," May continued. "Trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Every moment is an opportunity to embrace change, to grow into who you are meant to become." Lien closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. She realized that she had been holding on to so many old patterns, old fears, and old wounds. The fear of change had kept her stuck in a cycle of stagnation. But now, she could feel the stirrings of a new beginning, like the river carving its path through the land, reshaping itself with each passing moment. Key takeaways from the story. Change is inevitable, just like the river, life is constantly changing. Embracing this flow rather than resisting it allows us to experience growth, peace, and transformation. Let go of the fear of the unknown, fear often arises when we face change, but we must learn to trust the process and allow life to unfold as it is meant to. Surrender to the flow of life, when we stop clinging to the past and start flowing with life's natural course. We open ourselves to new opportunities, experiences, and personal growth. In the days that followed, Lien began to let go of her need for control. She started to embrace the changes happening in her life. Whether it was a new phase in her career, a shift in her personal relationships, or even the deepening of her understanding of herself. Each day brought new lessons, and instead of resisting, Lien accepted them with grace. She began to notice that by surrendering to the natural flow of life, she felt lighter. Her heart no longer felt heavy with the burden of trying to control every outcome. She began to feel a sense of peace in the unknown, knowing that change was not something to fear, but something to be embraced as a part of the process of becoming who she was meant to be. May watched from a distance, silently observing the transformation in Lien. She could see the woman had begun to understand that life's true beauty lies in its unpredictability, in its constant movement, and in the lessons that come with each change. May knew that Lien had taken a great step toward inner peace and fulfillment. As May reflects on her transformative journey, she realizes that true strength comes not from the battles we fight externally, but from the internal battles we conquer. Through learning to let go of past wounds, releasing her attachment to material things, and accepting the flow of life's changes, May has grown into a person of wisdom, peace, and compassion. Her journey serves as a reminder that the path to inner peace is not an easy one. But with patience, self-reflection, and an open heart, we can all overcome the challenges that life throws our way. Just as May embraced the teachings of mindfulness, forgiveness, and non-attachment, we too can live a life of fulfillment and serenity. If you found May's story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more insightful lessons. Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. We'd love to hear how you are applying these lessons in your own life. Remember, the most powerful change starts within. Be kind, be patient, and above all, be present. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Let me know if you need any more adjustments or additional sections for the video.